Welcome to the Young Turks. We got a really interesting interview for you guys today because we're going to be interviewing the new executive director of Justice Democrats. So we launched this yesterday, and I told you that obviously I'm involved in it. I'm one of the founders, but I also told you that there were some folks who worked on Bernie's campaign, and so I wanted to introduce you to Saikat Chakrabarti. He is the executive director of Justice Democrats. He was also the former director of organizing technology for the Bernie Sanders campaign. He previously worked at Stripe, and he built the first version of Stripe's product, whatever that means. I'll ask him about it in a second. He worked for a company called Mockingbird that, as far as I know, was not killed, so that's good. And now he's the executive director. So I want to talk about Justice Democrats in a second, and what your goals are for the organization, since you're running it, and what your vision for it is. But first, it's just a little bit of background. What does it mean to be director of organizing technology for Sanders' campaign?
Sure. Yeah. So in the Sanders campaign, we had this huge groundswell of volunteer support, right? And they're all around the country. And we had this distributed team that was responsible for organizing kind of a national base of volunteers, basically. Get people organized in national teams to make voter contact calls, knock on doors, all kinds of stuff, host events. And I was sort of the embedded tech guy making technology for volunteers to organize themselves. So I would do stuff like create software for volunteers to find volunteers near them to call and contact or bring to their own parties and stuff like that. So it was kind of a new position. I don't actually know if previous campaigns have had a director of organizing technology. So I got to experiment with it. It was pretty fun.
Okay, that's well, you guys did an amazing job, so I'm glad you did experiment with it. So when you say distributed team, what does that mean?
So distributed team, so basically, when the campaign happens, there's 4 states that everyone cares about. Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina. That's the first 4 primaries. But during that time, from the Bernie campaign, we still had millions of people everywhere else that all wanted to get involved, do something. So the campaign at that point, they put all their money and their field staff, and it was an incredible field staff working in these first 4 states. But to organize these other volunteers, they said, let's just make a team that's responsible for the other 46 states at first. Eventually, we did have field staff there, and get these volunteers to do something. So we set up the program to have them call into the first 4 states and then eventually everywhere else, and basically get them organized and do all that. So that was called a distributed team because we were all over the place, essentially.
I got you. So if you're living in California and you're super psyched about Sanders, but they need help in organizing Nevada, then you could be part of a distributed team that helped in those first 4 states.
Exactly, yeah.
And then eventually, state by state, you need help in Michigan, that team helps in Michigan. Okay, that makes sense. And we have a similar strategy in Wolfpack too. That's, of course, the pack to get money out of politics.
Right.
So just going to touch on your previous experience. Is Mockingbird still around, or
It is, yeah.
It is, okay. So, and what does it do other than mock other birds? Presumably it doesn't do that. It does technology.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what it is. No, it's a wireframing tool. So it's a design tool for people to mock up websites. That's why I mock. A little pun in there.
Oh, a little pun. I like puns.
There we go.
Okay, I'm a big fan of puns. Okay, I got it. When you said wireframing, you see why we match up well? Because I don't know how to turn on a computer sometimes, right? So I hear wireframing, I think hangers, but they're not hangers.
Not
okay.
hangers. No.
Okay, got you. And Stripe does the payment processing stuff, right?
That's right.
So what was the first product of Stripe? What does that mean?
So Stripe started off, it still kind of is, it's a really developer-focused product. So we made an API, which I know I might be going into acronyms that don't make sense
API.
territory. But
Okay.
basically, we made an API and a dashboard. It was the main product that we were pushing in front of developers, because more and more developers are the ones that are building these sites with e-commerce. It's kind of crazy to think of it now, but a lot of the old stuff really focused on pitching to managers, because they thought managers are the ones making these websites. Turns out that's not the case. It's developers doing it. So it was kind of a product focused on developers to start accepting payments. And it's really focused on small businesses and people getting started.
I get it. So, and that's important to this story because, so if you don't know, PayPal was dominant in that space of processing payments online. And Stripe, this part I do know because I also run the business of Young Turks, right? Came out of nowhere, and now we use it so much more for membership than we do for use PayPal because it was so much better. And so if the product is the thing that people actually buy and use, right, to process the payments, you did a hell of a job with it.
Thanks.
So nice work. So you know technology, and through the Sanders campaign, you know organizing. So how are we going to organize Justice Democrats?
Well, we're going to take a lot of the stuff we learned from the Sanders campaign. You know, that was, I call it a proving model for the whole system. We saw this campaign that was grassroots fueled, grassroots donors, volunteerism, and that was able to out-voter contact, outraise, you know, on all these metrics that people spout, it defeated the Hillary Clinton campaign. It defeated this billionaire-backed campaign, right? So we're going to do that same thing, but we're going to take it forward to Congress, and we have to do something that's big. We're going to organize in a distributed fashion. We're going to have all the same problems, and we just had our chance to kind of make our mistakes in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you learn, and you know, online, you guys in a sense did a macro A/B test.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that, yeah.
And so there's a lot of lessons that are learned from that. And so, yeah, because people might think, well, Hillary Clinton won, so, you know, how successful was the Bernie Sanders campaign? Now, I think most of the Young Turks viewers know that that's a silly way of looking at it, but for older people who are totally clueless, let me explain. So Hillary Clinton had enormous brand name recognition, and in politics, that's actually, unfortunately, the most important thing. And so she had a 60-point lead when you guys started the campaign, and you weren't there at the time, but in the beginning of 2015, right?
Yeah.
And a 60-point lead is not a lead that can be closed, and certainly not in a year, and certainly with no name recognition that Bernie Sanders had. And so, and if at the time you had said to almost everyone, hey, Bernie Sanders is going to close that 60-point lead, I mean, everybody in Washington would have looked at you like you had 3 or maybe 4 eyes. Like, you know, you know, to Bernie Sanders against Hillary Clinton, you're crazy. And she had every, endorsement, every piece of the backing, including obviously the DNC, as it turned out. And there was one guy in 2013 who predicted that Bernie Sanders could beat Hillary Clinton. Okay, yeah, all right, fine, it was me. Okay, but he didn't win. But if you said, look, he's going to close that lead, he's going to outraise Hillary Clinton, no one would have believed that. With small donors, you're going to outraise the Clinton machine. They would have thought you were crazy, but you did do it, right? So as it turns out, the name recognition, and the endorsements, et cetera, eked out a victory for Hillary Clinton in the primary. So we know that. But it was really a Herculean task, and it was amazing that in terms of the votes, you guys got that close, and certainly in outraising her, unbelievable. So tell us a couple of, like, just the secrets of how it was done, and because I'm curious, and I know the audience is curious, because they're got to be thinking right now, really the same thing they would ask Bernie. You guys, Justice Democrats, you didn't even exist until 2 days ago. Sure, yeah. How are you going to take out the corporate Democrats? They got billions of dollars.
Well, here's the thing that the corporate Democrats don't get, right? They saw this whole Bernie thing, and they're like, oh, that was just a phase, that was a blip. They didn't get the real message out of that, which was that Bernie Sanders was able to tap into something that creates enthusiasm. He had a pure message. He had the credential to back it up, right? And people are afraid that for some reason everyone's gonna forget about that and stop caring about that, and that's not true. You know, so we have to do that. So that's, you know, not an organizing point, but we're gonna have the same. We're not gonna be corporate backed. We're not gonna be billionaire backed. We have to hammer this home, and we're gonna be doing something big. That's the other piece here. Is Bernie Sanders was talking about doing something huge. He was talking about a political revolution, and we're gonna have to do the same thing. Because people want to help when they feel like their time is worth helping. That's the biggest lesson. Is one thing I learned from organizing in Bernie Sanders' campaign. You can get the best people to organize if they think it's worth their time. So we have to make it worth their time.
Yeah, absolutely. And same thing in Wolfpack. You know, when we prove out and we win in states, we get more volunteers because they realize it's that the naysayers are wrong. That things are far more possible than people realize. And the more victories you pile up, the more people want to get involved and start to believe the revolution can happen. Look, the reason I'm excited and I wanted to be involved is that everybody talks about the revolution. I talk about the revolution. But what is the revolution? What is it physically? What does it manifest as? Well, if it's just an idea or it's just marches or it's just protests, that doesn't really get the job done, right? in order to get the job done, you have to actually win. So how do you win? You win by winning elections. You win by winning, right? So now, you know, people will ask, well, there's other progressive groups. Why not just join them? But the way I saw it, Saikat, and I'm curious, you know, obviously what you think about this, like I didn't see them saying, hey, we're going to run hundreds of candidates, and we're not going to take any corporate money, and we're going to primary all of the establishment Democrats. So we're not going to be like, is it Chuck Schumer? Maybe yes, maybe no, right? No, it's a hard no. We're gonna get people to actually run who care about their community. And to me, I didn't see anyone else doing that, and I think that's a powerful idea. So if this ain't the revolution, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, everyone else is afraid of going that far, and it's not a time to be afraid of that.
Yeah, I think it might be that simple, guys. And I think that if someone just starts, and here we've kind of started, right? We're on the road, that it gathers up momentum, because it's what you guys might not see, but what Saikat and I see, because based on the experience that we've had in politics, is that in Washington, there's a lot of brakes. It's not a lot of gas pedals when you want to go in a progressive direction. There's a lot of brakes, tapping the brakes. Like, but do you want to go that far? And I've now done many interviews since in this last 24 hours that we launched this. And the number one question I get is, but wait a minute now, are you really going to primary vulnerable Democrats? Yeah, that's the whole point. Part of the reason that they're vulnerable is because they don't have a populist economic message. And so, you know, when you look at the nominees, because we now had over 400 people nominated already, and part of what JusticeDemocrats.com is looking for is nominations. We want you to nominate someone else to run for office, someone you think that's great in your community and can represent you better than a guy who's taking corporate money, right? When you look at those nominees, what's the thing that you're looking for where you think, no, this person can actually win?
I mean, we're looking for people who are strong leaders in their community, right? So we're looking for people who have this lifetime of service. And here's the crazy thing. If you look at the backgrounds of incumbents in office right now, they have nothing impressive. Most of them are just, they do this track of going to an Ivy League college, hooking up with donors, get into office. And it's, so we're not actually up against impressive people in that sense. But when you look at these nominees, they're so impressive. They're people who are, you know, they've turned a school around by just coming in, they volunteered, and they didn't have to. They had a cushy job they could have taken, but they didn't do it, right? Or we have someone who's like done 5 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He didn't have to, he came back. He became an ACLU president in his local chapter. So these people that just have this lifetime of service. They don't have the political record, but they have the life record. And that's what we're looking for.
And if this election proved anything, it's that people don't want the standard politician, right? I mean, they'll even vote for a guy who I think is both a goofball and a monster, just so they won't have to vote for a standard politician. So all the things that the media has been telling you your whole life is exactly the reverse. They tell you, no, you have to be polished, and you have to be studied, and you have to read off a teleprompter, and you know, and don't make any mistakes, and don't ever act like a human. No, in the Justice Democrats, we allow humans. Okay, and in fact, we encourage that. We want that, of course. We want you to be real, because that not only is better way to represent the community, but it's also more effective in actually winning.
Yeah.
So we're done with the era of people rolling up their sleeves, and because a consultant told them to roll up their sleeves and makes them look more real. You know how you're going to look more real? By being more real. Okay, right. So find those folks and nominate them at justicedemocrats.com. Obviously, you're also raising money because it's all of this is going to require a ton of money to run. I mean, let's be practical and realistic about that. So it's not that we need a specific number, but what's your sense of scale here? Can you run? Is it? I know you want to run hundreds of candidates. Is that by 2020?
As soon as we can. You know, we go as big as we can as soon as we can. That's the way I look at it. So if we can do it by 2018, we do it in 2018. Mm-hmm. If we can do it by 2020, we do it by 2020. I'm not going to stop doing this until we do it. So if we do it by 2024, I'll do it by 2024.
Yeah, and so I want you to understand what that means practically, right? So we've already got hundreds of nominees, but you got to be careful and you got to select the right candidate for every election, because we want to win. This is not an exercise in feeling good. This is an exercise in getting real change. And let us whisper of a dream here. Look, we want hundreds. We want to replace Congress with, and so the minute that you do that, by the way, you know what's the first thing you do? You get money out of politics, so that then everybody's on the same playing field, because money's going to come back in, right? And those guys are like, oh, if we throw out a couple of them, they're going to want to put in even more money against us, right? That's why this has got to be a wave, and so I'm excited about it. But so the whisper of a dream. If in 2018 we don't achieve our grand vision of a wholesale change in 2 years, which is very, very hard, we know that, right? Are you kidding me? If you got 6, let alone 12, let alone 24 people in Congress, you know what would happen in Washington? People would freak the hell out. They'd be like, oh my God, what in the world? These guys that had no money to begin with, no nothing to begin with, just put 24 people in Congress, and they're humans. Right? They're an accountant, they're a doctor, they're, maybe a housewife, a house dad, whatever, but who actually brought all the kids to soccer, who actually cared about the community. It makes me, in Maine, they have public financing. And so one of the women who won in Maine runs the local grocery store, the cash register. She doesn't own it, she doesn't manage it, she just runs the cash register. But she knows everybody in the community because everybody goes to that mart and they go to the cash register. So she won, right? So amazing things are possible if you live in a real democracy. And I think we could bring that back. So it's exciting times, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. We want people to nominate, but we also we need donations, right? Yeah. Because realistically, now let's talk old school before we talk about us. Because we think that we might be able to do it in a way that doesn't require billions of dollars, right? But in the old days, how much money did you need to run a congressional campaign?
By old days, you mean like these days?
As in about 4 years ago, 2 years ago / today? Yeah,
it's about $1 million a congressional race. That's the going rate. And so the other way of saying that is that's the price tag for a politician these days, if you're on that block. But yeah, it's if we want to run 435 races, if we're running them one at a time, it'd be about probably $400-odd million.
Yeah. So now, guys, don't panic. You don't need the $400 million overnight, and we don't have a sugar daddy, so that's not how it's going to work. It is going to work $27 at a time. On the other hand, Bernie Sanders, $27 at a time, raised $250 million. Right. So now the idea here is that the Just Democrats carry forward that idea, okay? Because as Bernie himself would tell you, it's not about a personality, it's not about one person, it's about an idea. And by the way, he's doing great work also at Our Revolution. There are many other groups that are doing wonderful work, right? This group in particular runs progressive candidates. That's what we do, right? And we primary corporate Democrats with no mercy, right? Because if we don't have strong progressives, Saikat, now we could whisper of a nightmare. I'm worried that if we don't do this, 4 years from now, the third ways of the world that are busy now spending a lot of money on reports to show us that actually the better way to go is more corporate Democrats. And they get their way and they run another fake, inauthentic person that takes a ton of money from corporations. Hey, we had to take the money to win. That's what they'll say. We had to take the money to win. Yeah. And they run them against Trump. And Democrats lose, progressives lose. Unimaginable, unthinkable. We have to stop that at all costs. And I think that if the minute we get anybody into Congress, let alone the 6, 8, 10, 12, whatever that number is, then people start to go, oh shoot, it is possible. It is possible, and that is the winning strategy. Look at how they did it. So,
and here's the thing that I'm excited about. If you look at Bernie, he won 25, 26 states, something like that, or 24 states. If we do anywhere close to that, we're sending actual people to Congress, right? We're not just winning some states in a primary. We're sending bodies to Congress. So that's why if we do it that way, we can actually do pretty well. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So let's wrap up on that idea, because think about this, guys. The presidential race, unfortunately, is winner take all, right? So it's binary. You either win or you don't win. But if those same people who showed up for Bernie in the primaries show up in congressional races, it's not winner take all. You could capture 17 races. You can capture 34 seats, 48. We don't know, right? But if all those folks, the same number of people who showed up for Bernie, show up to vote in actual primaries and then congressional races, then we're going to shock the world. And that's all we need. All we need is the same number of people who voted for Bernie. And then you get to change the world. And so that's pretty exciting stuff. So look, at justicedemocrats.com, with Saikat is, of course, as we explained, running and organizing and doing the technology for. And by the way, there are others who worked on Bernie's team that are part of Justice Democrats. There's senior advisors like Zach Exley. But actually, before I wrap up, did everybody on the team that is working on Justice Democrats, were they all on the Bernie team on your side?
Not everyone on the team. We have a pretty good group of staffers and volunteers. We got a bunch of the greatest grassroots volunteers from the Bernie campaign to join us as well.
Okay, excellent. So a significant portion of Bernie's team, obviously the TYT network, very excited about it. So what I was going to say is that, of course we want you to donate, and of course we want you to nominate, but we also just want you to join. That takes 5 seconds, just to be able to say, I'm part of this movement. And if we've got a couple million people who have signed up, that is also going to send a very clear message. So, and part of what the mainstream media pays attention to is, oh, you raised a lot of money. Like, then they're like, wait, then you're relevant. Money matters, right? Or you get 2 million people to sign up for your group. That ain't nothing to sneeze at, right? So tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell everybody. Just takes 5 to 10 seconds to go to justicedemocrats.com. That's the first thing you see there. Sign up, and that's the beginning of a journey. And let's hope that journey ends in revolution.